consider this in a more abstract, maybe philosophic way by thinking about an ideal case. Now, by ideal, I don't mean that we should aim for this or to urge that we promote such things, but only to sort of open our minds to an issue that isn't, I think, adequately considered, but is relevant to this entire conference and project. So the completed life, an ideal case. Now, of course, there's a sense in which all lives are completed. Everyone dies. And there's another sense in which lives are completed, not only deaths outside of a medical context, but medically managed dying. We've talked about all these things, and we'll be continuing to talk about them. But I want to think about a rather different sort of case. I'd like to take you back to an island off the coast of Greece it's called Kea today, and here's what it looks like today. But I'd like to jump back about 2,000 years to the period between 14 and 37 AD or CE, to the reign of the Roman Emperor Tiberius, and introduce to you Sextus Pompeius, who was consul, and he was later proconsul of all of Asia under Tiberius. And with this company, there was a certain Valerius Maximus, right? We know almost nothing about him except that he flourished during the period in which Tiberius was emperor. And he also wrote a treatise called Memorable Doings and Sayings. And it's from this treatise, this account of his observations of things that this story is taken. So this is Valerius's account of what he saw on the island of Kea when he was there. Please pay careful attention to the details because these are what are relevant to our story. So, Valerius reports, it so happened that on that occasion, here he is in Kea, that a lady of the highest rank there, but in extreme old age, after explaining to her fellow citizens why she ought to depart from life, determined to put an end to herself by poison. This would have been the hemlock. And here, this is not necessarily of her, but these are Roman matrons, and here is an older lady. And she set much store, this older lady, by having her death gain celebrity by the presence of Pompeius. Nor could that gentleman, remember he's the consul and hence the superior presence in this region, nor could that gentleman reject her plea, excellently endowed as he was with the virtue of good nature, as with all other noble qualities. So he visited her and in fluent speech, and this would have been the local speech, not his Roman language, which flowed from his lips as from some copious fountain of eloquence, tried at length, but in vain, to turn her back from her design. Tried at length, but in vain, to turn her back from her design. Finally, he let her carry out her intention. Having passed her 90th year, and please keep paying attention to these details, in the soundest of health and mind and body, she lay on her bed, which was spread, as far as might be perceived, more elegantly than every day. And resting on her elbow, as the Romans would have, she spoke, Sextus Pompeius, may the gods whom I am leaving, rather than those to whom I am going, repay you because, two things, you have not disdained to urge me to live, nor yet to be the witness of my death. And as for me, and here is the central claim, I have always seen fortune's smiling face. Rather than be forced through greed of living to see her frown, I am exchanging what remains of my breath for a happy end, leaving 2 daughters and a flock of 7 grandchildren to survive me. Then, having urged her family to live in harmony, she distributed her estate among them, having consigned her own observance and the domestic rights to her elder daughter. She took the cup in which the poison had been mixed in a firm grasp. Here's a later artist's recreation of the death of a Roman matron. This woman is obviously younger and not in bed, but this is the general idea. This practice was more accepted in these days. Back to the woman of Kea. After pouring libations to Mercury and invoking his divine power, that he conduct her on a calm journey to the happier part of the underworld, she eagerly drained the fatal potion. She indicated in words the parts of her body which numbness seized one by one. If you recall the story of Socrates drinking the hemlock, he does the same thing. And when she told us that it was about to reach her vitals and heart, she summoned her daughter's hands to the last office to close her eyes. She dismissed us, stunned by so extraordinary a spectacle, but bathed in tears. The picture of all those Romans in all their extraordinary uniforms is quite remarkable, bathed in tears. Now let's look at this story. So here, the choice of death is obviously voluntary, and there's no physical suffering or incapacity, and no apparent pressures from the family that we can see. Now, she does seek permission from Pompeius. He tries to dissuade her, but he finally gives permission. And the poison, no doubt the hemlock, was presumably prepared by the physician. In these days, the physician would have been his own apothecary. And this would have happened backstage, so to speak. But it's the physician who would have known where to obtain this and how to prepare it. And finally, in this story, libations are poured to Mercury and prayers made to other gods, both of this world and the other world. So if we look at this in terms of modern contemporary bioethics, right, here's what we see, the same elements that we think of when we think about end-of-life choices and activities. This is clearly an autonomous choice. This doesn't involve impairment of any kind. There's no evidence in this story of abuse. This lady seeks legal approval. And of course, Pompeius is the law here. So she finally does gain this. I think it's fair to say that what Pompeius does as he tries to dissuade her is to conduct what we'd call a psych exam. He explores whether this is voluntary, whether it's rational, and whether he can dissuade her, and discovers that she is sincere about this and has good reasons for it. There's what we would now recognize as physician assistance. The doctor in the background somewhere is the one who provides access to the drug, and it's understood as religiously acceptable. This is an extraordinary story, this account from 2,000 years ago. And what it tells us is that what it portrays for us is that there are two possible motives for seeking to die. You might choose death as a matter of surcease, of relief from sufferings, or as preemptive. That is preemptive in the sense of avoiding what might come as one goes down that final downhill slope. All of the things that Tim was talking about earlier. So we can ask, as we come to a close here and looking at this vignette, would preemptive choices of death ever be socially acceptable? I think we're much clearer as a society that surcease choices, relief from current suffering, are quite understandable, but these we're less clear about. So back to Valerius Maximus. On the way to Sia, he and with him, or in the company of Pompeius, they had stopped at what's now present-day Marseille, inhabited by the Massilians, and he reports this. A poison, compounded of hemlock, is under public guard in that community, which is given to one who has shown reasons are essential, to the 600, that's their Senate, why death is desirable for him. The inquiry, that is the exploration of the reasons and the processing of the request, is conducted with firmness tempered by benevolence, not suffering the subject to leave life rashly, but providing a swift means of death to one who rationally desires a way out. So all of the talk that we've engaged in about rational suicide or rational choices of earlier death are in play here. And here is this essential theme about the two reasons. Thus, persons encountering an excess of bad fortune, and things will get worse, or good fortune, for either might afford reason for ending life. The one, lest it continue, the bad fortune; the other, the good fortune, lest it fail, to find a finish to it in an improved departure. So there we have it. This is this ideal that we haven't succeeded in exploring. Rather than be forced through greed of living to see her frown, I'm exchanging what remains of my breath for a happy end. I think it's fair to say that as a community considering end-of-life issues, we have certainly focused on those situations in which fortune's frowning face is what faces us. But this preemptive strategy is something I think not really recognized in any of our legal or cultural commitments in the present time. So thank you very much. If you'd like to see Valerius Maximus's account in detail, there's the reference. It's from a very large historical source book that I had the privilege of editing, available for free on this archive website. There is also, if you want an oversight of this entire historical compilation, there's where you can find it. Thanks so much.